Mom, what are you doing?
I'm reading the instructions all the way through before we start the video. So, as soon as I'm done reading the instructions, we'll get started. Okay, so this month we've got to do a little prep work. The little snowflakes that we're stitching off, those are freestanding lace. So we're going to stitch those off, soak them in water, and then we'll continue on with the rest of the blocks. So first thing you're going to do is hoop up 2 pieces of aqua mesh. Now we're going to be stitching off 2 snowflakes, and I just decided instead of trying to do both of them in one hoop, I don't want them to pucker. And so I think they're going to stitch off better if we do them individually, one by one, in the 4x4 hoop. So I've hooped up the 4x4 with 2 layers of aqua mesh. I'm threading up with just the white thread on top, and then I'm using just a white pre-wound bobbin. And we're going to go into the embroidery file in your May folder and get the snowflake design. And so it's going to take 21 minutes to stitch off each one, and then we'll have to soak it. We're going to trim it down and then soak it and let that dry before we continue on with the rest of the blocks. So once we get that going, some of the other prep work while those are stitching and we're waiting for those to dry, we made a managerial decision. Instead of using the dark gray fabric, I just thought that was weird that they threw in dark gray. So we pulled the green, and we're going to do our design on the green. And that's what the snowflakes are going to be sewn to. And then we have 3 filler blocks that we're going to be doing. And in the instructions on page 4 here, it says to iron to the wrong side for fabric 3 and fabric 6. Really, it's the 2 lighter blocks. So the solid white, you're going to iron a piece of SF101 onto the back of that, and then the white with the red check, you're going to iron SF101 onto the back of that one. So it's just 1 of each of those, and then 2 of the black. And then we'll cut our batting also, and I'll show you how to cut that in just a sec. Okay, your batting, what you're going to cut are 2 4x4s, and then we need 3 2x6. Here is the first snowflake stitched off, and so while the second one is stitching, what we're going to do is just trim this down. In the instructions it said about 1/4 of an inch away from the snowflake. I'm going to go ahead and kind of trim out just some of the water soluble in between the little stitching. The less of this stabilizer you have, the less gummy it is when you go to wash it out. So just gonna get rid of some of that. Then we're just gonna take it, and it just says to soak it in some water, cool water. I'm just gonna run it under the sink, and you don't want to wash this water soluble out completely. You want to leave it kind of a little bit gummy so that it dries stiff. And then once the second one is done stitching, we're just gonna do the same thing. So I'm just trying to get rid of most of it. So now we're just gonna soak it and then let it dry. Okay, so we've got our snowflakes all prepared. So we just rinsed them in cold water and laid them out to dry. And it's the next day, so now we're ready to do the quilting. And so all we need to do is quilt the block. And then, so on the instructions on page 3, it's telling you that you're going to use the Winter 10 quilting design. So you'll just go into the background quilting folder and then pull up the Winter 10, and we want the 4x4 design. So I've got that one pulled up, and we need to do 2 of them, and I'm going to do them in the white. So I'm going to quilt on the white. I'm going to quilt the design with white thread, and so I've pulled up the design and I need 2 of them. So I'm just going to duplicate this one, and then they'll both fit in the 6x10 hoop. And so I've got them pulled up like that. Send it to the embroidery screen, and since I'm going to do both of them in the same color, I'm going to go ahead and do the color sort so that it groups the colors together. And so I've already sprayed the back of them. I've ironed the SF101 onto the back of the fabric, and we've sprayed the back of the fabric and the batting with the 505. So it's going to stitch off the placement line for both batting pieces first. Okay, so it's stitched off the batting placement. I don't need the batting tacked down, and since I've grouped the colors together, I've got to forward through both of those. So I'll go into the needle with the minus and the plus and just do the down arrow twice. And then now it's going to stitch the fabric placement lines. Okay, so now we just need to place the batting inside the batting placement lines. And using the white color thread makes it a little harder to see, but... And then we'll lay the fabric down on top of that. And then it's going to stitch the fabric tack down, and then the quilting. And now we're just going to do the quilting. Not much to this block so far. Okay, so now what we've got to do is stitch the little snowflakes onto the block. What it says to do in the instructions is either just like unhoop it, cut these out, stitch them on by hand. We're just stitching them right in the center, or some ladies are using like the button sew-on stitch to tack them on. What I'm going to try, well, I did it on this one and it worked. I'm going to use the embroidery machine. So what I did here is I measured from this tack down line, and it was 4.5 inches, and so I measured 2 1/4 in, 2 1/4 up, and I found the center, and I've marked that with the orange fabric marker. And then I'm going to take, not stand up so you can see this. I'm going to take a long piece of tape, and this is what I do when I sew on my buttons with the machine. I'm going to cut kind of a V-shape opening in this piece of tape, kind of a big one, and then open it up, and then I'm going to place the snowflake in the center. Now the way they had it in the picture is they had one of the arms of the snowflake going up and down and then left to right. We're kind of offsetting them just a little bit like that, but just kind of make sure you're kind of in the center there, like that. Like that. Is that your stomach? Bailey's hungry. Okay, and then I'm going to tape it down and hold it in place. And then I'm going to put this on the machine. Now this machine has the camera where you can scan it. If you have one that you can use your app and take a picture of, you want to do that. And then I'm going to go in, and I'm going to, in the embroidery machine, a lot of the machines, you can bring up decorative stitches. And so I'm going to go into this group right here, and we have this little eyelet stitch. And so I selected that. I'm going to go in, and I shrunk it down, just the default, as much as it would go. And then send it to the embroidery machine. And now I'm going to scan in the hoop. Okay, and so now I can see on my screen, so I'm going to move it down. I'm going to zoom in. I can't zoom in here. I'm going to hit return and zoom in. Okay, so now I can get it. Sorry. Her stomach's growling in my ear. Okay, right there. Look centered. Yes? Okay. And then send that to the embroidery screen and then just stitch it off. Probably make sure you have a good sharp needle in there because it is kind of going through quite a bit of thickness. And when it makes that sound, it's done. And so now you just peel the tape off. And you could use Kimberbell tape, but this way, if there is some within those stitches, it doesn't show. But now they're stitched on. So we're gonna go eat lunch and then we'll do the piecing part of the project. Okay, so now we're ready to do the filler blocks, and these are going to be pieced and quilted in the hoop. And so on page 4 of your instructions, I've laid out our fabrics the way they show in the picture. And so this one's going to be block 10, this one's 11, and this one is 14. I've laid out our threads here, so we're going to quilt this one with kind of the medium green, this one with the brighter pink, and then that one with the red. And so it's showing down here on the instructions for the block by block quilting. For block 10, we're going to use the little bow design, and then block 11 and 14, it's the Christmas 17, which is the design with the little bell and the reindeer. You'll be able to see it when we bring it up on the machine. So we're going to come back over here, go to the embroidery, get into our USB. So we're going to go into the embroidery file first, and we're going to get the piecing file. And that's going to be the rectangle one. And I'm going to set that. And then I'm going to add the quilting file on top of that. So we're going to go back to our USB. Time we're going to go into the background quilting. I'm going to get the one with the reindeer first, and it's the Christmas 17, and we want the one that's a 2.5 by 6.5, or the file's 2 by 6, and we're just going to get the clear blue tile design, not the block by block. So this time we're going to go into the clear blue tile folder. And we're going to go get the 2 by 6, that one. And set that. Now I need 2 of these. So one's going to be for block 11 and one's for block 14. So I'm going to save this in the memory pocket of the machine. And then go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and hit embroidery, and then that way I can move this one down here, and it's got both of the designs grouped together. Okay, I'm going to hit return, and then I'm going to add from our memory pocket, same design. Now I want to move this. Actually, I could leave these 2 right here in the center. And so, no, I want to spread them out a little bit. So I'm going to move them. I need to select both of them, the quilting design and the piecing design. So I'm going to go to the multi-select, It has the quilt design highlighted right now. It has the red boxes around it, so I'm going to push select, and that quilting design turns pink. Then I'm going to use the arrows and choose the piecing design and then select that. Then I'm going to go, and I'm going to go ahead and rotate these. So I'm going to go into edit, group those two together, and then go into rotate and rotate at 90 degrees. And then move those up here. And then if I want to rotate, I think I do want to go ahead and rotate these also. So I'm going to go back to the multi-select, use my arrows, get the piecing design selected, get that quilting design selected, group those, rotate them, move them here, rotate them, move them up. Okay, now I need to add the other one that has the other quilting design. So I'm going to push add, and we're going to go back and we're going to get the piecing design first. So we're going to go into the embroidery folder and get the piecing design, set that, and then I'm going to add the quilting design on top of it. This time we're going to go into the background quilting. Now, I'm going to explain something. When I went into the Christmas 17 for the reindeer and the bow and the snowflake, they had the two different options. I had a block by block file and a clear blue tile file. The block by block quilting is what we've mainly been doing because it has the placement line for your batting and your fabric and the tack down for your batting and your fabric. So that's what those little rectangles around the design are. When you go into the clear blue tile folder, it's just the quilting design. And so for this design, I went into the clear blue tile folder because I already had the placement line for our batting was in with the piecing design. So it already has those outside rectangles included with our piecing design. But when we go into the bow folder, the way they've digitized this design, the bow design isn't really made to do with the clear blue tile because you can see the connecting stitches are stitched out within that border right there, where the connecting stitches on this one are actually kind of part of the design. So the bow doesn't give us a clear blue tile folder to go into. What we're going to be bringing up is the block by block folder that's going to have the placement lines for the batting and the backing and everything. But that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go get the 2x6, and it's going to place it right on top of our piecing design. And now I need to select both of those and rotate them. And again, if you were doing these individually, you don't need to mess with all this. So I'm just going to go in and select the quilting design and the piecing design. Group those together, rotate them, and then move them down here. Okay, now I'm ready to start stitching, so we're going to hit embroidery. It's going to start with one of these, not exactly sure which one. So I'm going to do my +1 to see where it goes. Okay, it's going to start with this one up here. So what it's going to stitch off first is going to be our template that's going to include the placement lines for our batting and everything. So we're going to stitch that. And again, I still have the white threaded up. Okay, so here's my template, okay, for the piecing, and this is also my placement line for my batting. it's going to start the piecing. I'm going to lay my first piece of fabric right here. So I'm just going to show you, I'm going to extend this template line out here. And so when I lay my batting down, that's going to cover up those template lines, but your fabric is very large, and so you just want to lay that first piece down, you know, to make sure you're covering up over that template line. And the first piece on this one is this green, and it doesn't have really a right or a wrong side. If it did, you want to make sure that you're laying it right side up. Okay? And no. Okay. So this is our trim line that it just stitched. So that kind of tacks this first piece down, and then we're going to trim on that line right next to it. And then we're going to take the next piece and you lay it right side down, cover up that trim line, and then it's going to stitch the seam line. And this is where we use the little fabric folding pins. You're gonna run that fabric folding pin along that seam line. Then you flip this top piece up and kind of finger press it. And then it's going to stitch the trim line. Then we're gonna trim that away. Then, sorry, reach across you. Get the next piece and lay it over, and then stitch the seam line. And this is right side down, so the first piece we laid right side up, and then all your pieces after that are laid right side down. And then I'm going to run the pin across that seam, flip it up, and then what it's going to stitch now, so it's done with the piecing, it's going to stitch kind of a little tack down stitch all the way around. And now, because I brought in the clear blue tile design, come up on the screen here. See how the clear blue tile design is just the quilting design. It doesn't have the placement line and the tack down. So it's going to go directly into the quilting. They stopped me. I need to change my thread. So I was going to do the green on this. Now we're going to do the quilting. Okay, we're having one of those projects today. So I just realized I pulled the wrong fabrics for this first block, and I'm doing filler block 10, and it's the one that was supposed to have the bow design on it. So oh well, so we're gonna go on and I'll do the bow design on that one over here. So we're gonna improvise here. So I'm gonna do this step one more time. I'm gonna go ahead and leave the green thread on here to do the, actually, I'm gonna thread up with the pink. Okay, So now we're doing the middle one. It's block 11, and it is supposed to have the quilt design with the reindeer on it. So I've gone ahead and I've threaded up with the pink thread so you can see the placement lines and everything a little bit better. So it's going to be doing our template first, and while it's doing that, I'm going to go spray my piece of batting with the 505 spray. Okay, so now I'm going to lay the batting inside the placement line in the middle there. And then my template lines are about, right here. So I just need to make sure the first piece of fabric that I lay down is going to cover that up. And it's right side up. Then it's going to stitch the trim line. And there's not much to trim there, but I'll trim a little bit. Little bitty bit. And then the next piece is the green. We're going to lay it down. It doesn't really have a right or a wrong side, so just lay it down on top. Do the seam line. Do the starch pin or the fabric folding pin. Flip that up. Then it's going to stitch the trim line. Trim that. So make sure when you're trimming you don't get a hold of your batting. Then lay this piece, it has the SF101 on the back of it, lay it right side down, cover up that green fabric, and stitch the seam line. Fabric folding pin, flip it, and then it's going to stitch the kind of holding tack down. I'm just kind of pulling this white piece up a little bit so it's taut. And you could tape these if you wanted to, not stick your fingers up in there. And this one's just going to go directly into the quilting also. Okay, so we're on the last one. I've threaded up with the red thread, and it's going to do the little template. And so while it's doing that, I'm going to go spray my batting. Okay, I'm going to lay the batting down inside that. Then I'm going to start with this fabric. We'll see how I plan that because this fabric has bows on it. So see, it's playing that way. Make sure I'm covering up that first, the template line, right side up. And you can basically tell because your needle is about to stitch the trimming line. And so if I laid my fabric way down here, you can tell my needle's going to miss that. So in fact, I'm going to go ahead and bump it up just a little bit. And so you can kind of go off of where your needle's at, whether you're laying your fabric down with enough room. And then it's going to stitch the trim line. Then we're going to trim that. Then lay this fabric right side down. And it's going to sew the seam line. Folding pin, flip it, trim line,
And I may end up, because I did the wrong quilting design on these, once we start putting this all together, I may end up kind of rearranging some of these filler blocks. They're filler blocks. I figure they can go wherever we want them to go. And now I'm going to trim that. Then last piece. Doesn't have a right or wrong, so just lay it down. Stitch the seam. And now it's going to stitch the tack down.
Okay, now this is the design that is just the block by block design. So what it's wanting to stitch off is the placement line and tack downs for the batting and the fabric. So we're going to need to forward through all of that. So I've already gone into that little needle with the minus and the plus, and then we're just going to go down through all 4 of those to get to the quilting design, and then stitch the quilting design. So our snowflake blocks need to be cut down to 4.5 by 4.5. So I went ahead and used the orange pop ruler to do that. And then the filler blocks need to be cut down to 2.5 by 6.5. And so you have the tack down line here on the front. And so just use that as a guide and just use your ruler, but make sure it's 2.5 by 6.5. And we're done for this month.